Hey, hello, this is Jean Dorf from the podcast Thrive, Not Survive After Child Abuse with another episode. Yesterday we were talking about the body and mind and soul, and we used to say connection, and I might still say that, but actually, the body, mind, and soul, if something needs to be connected, that means there are individual parts, right? And then you can connect them, like I can connect to another person. But body, mind, and soul, there are all three, part of the same mesh, right? So that's a little bit. We talked about that yesterday. I was exploring that topic, so I probably find my voice a little bit stronger in the future to talk more about that. It's an important topic because a lot of people nowadays they feel very much they feel a disconnect because they start to see in they see these as three different parts instead of all part of the same mesh, right? So that was yesterday. Listen back to it if that's a topic that interests you. Today I want to talk about almost something completely different, and and I was talking to a colleague of mine, colleague dance teacher. He lives in the Netherlands. He's an awesome dance teacher, coach, has been dancing his whole life and is now also writing a book about it. We're working together on a couple of things. And so one of the things we always review is how is it going with my project, Broken Silence, right? And a dance's movement to stop sexual abuse. Uh, my friend here and my colleague is very much engaged into this project as well. After I told him the story, and after he read my book, so it's a good thing. I tend not to mention name in the podcast if I have not asked the person who I mentioned to do that, unless it's a very public figure, right? But this case is at least a very known dancer in our little dance world, Latin and ballroom dancing, right? And so at one day I asked him about a year ago. I asked him, would you mind choreographing a dance for me and my partner based on my book Broken Silence? And he said, sure, yeah, that would be an honor. We know each other for years already. Not that we know each other really well, but we knew each other decent well. And he said, yeah, why not, right? It took us a little while to get an appointment to come together. And then I asked him, I said, before you make the choreography or before we start to work together on this choreography, I would like you to read my book first. Well, he said, that's fine. He said, but can you not send me just a summary of it? I said, well, that's a little bit hard because every chapter has its own little story in itself, and I think it's kind of important. And the book is, by the way, it's not that thick. I said to him, right? It has only about 100 pages, and that's by design that I made it that way because it's packed full of stuff. But it's only 100 pages, so if you read really fast and you don't stop, which a lot of people do because it could trigger them a lot, but if you don't really stop, you can probably read it in half a day, right? Maybe sooner. Just I said, okay, let me do that. I am about to go to a trip, and that was before COVID-19. So he was about to go to Moscow, I believe. I said, so I have enough time to read it. And while he was reading it already on his way to Moscow, I started to, well, not when he was in a plane, but in transit, I guess. He started to text me already. He said, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. He said, I did not know all these things. And he was triggered in a positive way. He was very engaged in the story, saying, I did not know these things could happen. He said, I must have been completely naive. I'm just going to do some research whether these numbers that you are mentioning in your book, whether they are true or not. I said, yes, just please go, do that, right? Because I know that's true, but that doesn't mean, like, remember a few days ago I did a podcast on you have to see it to believe it. Some people don't believe the numbers that I tell, and actually I always take the conservative numbers. And it's not that he didn't want to believe me, he just wanted to convince himself. Yes, just the way the person is, and no problem with that, of course, and specifically not in this case. But he did his little research, just on Google, not even so in depth, and he found already tons of information that he says, "Oh my gosh, this is such an important topic." I wanna dedicate a lot of time to this project and help you guys, me and my partner, to make this a dance that actually is starting to fit in the goals that you want to raise awareness for sexual abuse and specifically child abuse and the impact it has on people and the non-profit organization that I have built around it, and which is called A Dancers Movement to Stop Sexual Abuse, right? So he said, let's do that when I come back in November, December. Then let's meet. We that is me and my partner would fly to the Netherlands, and he would come back from his trips. So we would do that. So that was one thing, right? He was reading his book. He never was involved in any of these things. And then after that, he started to ask around, specifically to women, because that's what I asked him. I said, you know what? You just ask an average woman that you meet, and she will probably tell you that she had at least some experience with abuse or harassment, or she knows of a friend that went through something similar like that, either as a child or maybe later in her adult life. And he, lo and behold, he did. And he said, oh, it's amazing how many people actually are affected by this. And he felt so naive about it. And I said, don't worry about it, because things that don't happen to us, sometimes we become a little bit oblivious from it, and that's a good thing, man. We don't have to carry all the misery of the world on our shoulders, right? If we all carry our own piece, maybe that makes the world a little bit lighter. I don't think that is physically correct, because I would still stand with my feet on the earth, but you kind of know what I mean, right? So I think it's kind of a nice saying that I come up with. If we all carry a little bit of the piece of the misery of the world, then maybe the whole world becomes a little bit lighter. Who knows how that works, right? And I'm coming back to this story a few times in future podcasts. But one thing that I wanted to address, he said, how come that we don't see it so much in the news? To be honest, if the numbers are so big, I said, actually, to be honest, I wonder the same. And a couple of things that I found out, and it's not to point a finger, I do understand how social media work. But if you look at social media, and if I post something that has something to do with my family, something happy, or some accolades that I did in my sports achievements, something like that, or I repost it, we get a lot of traffic around it. If I do some sort of a motivational thing, we get a lot of traffic around it. But the moment I start to mention sexual abuse and surviving sexual abuse, stuff like that, it becomes almost like an uphill battle. Unless you have some support of some celebrity, you, excuse me, it might be a little bit better. So I know that, social media nowadays, they have to make money too. And they thrive on happy news or so bad news that it's so this is one of the things that is a big taboo in newspapers as well. These stories are often so ugly, so if the news can focus on the perpetrator, it's always really, then it comes in the news. But it doesn't come in the news. It comes in the news a lot, but not that much, because it's very untangible, right? A lot of people have suffered from it, but at the same time, we don't talk about it. And that's exactly the problem that we have, right? I've started to talk about in this podcast that we need to learn how to talk about this. And it starts first and foremost with the victims themselves. But the victims themselves cannot teach them how to talk about these things. And forgive me that I say this, it's not an attack on you counselors. But if you were successful in this would be a way more open discussion than it is today. Right, so I really offer my help to help victims to go through it. I spoke to, I don't know what the word many means, but I spoke to enough people to know that once they spoke to someone who went through something similar, it helped them to be more free from the story that they have. I've been around this a few more times, right? So I started a movement within the non-profit organization, a Dancers Movement to Stop Sexual Abuse, which is called, one less story to tell. So if you tell your story, then there is one less story to tell. So we bring our stories open, right? We have a website for that, and it's the number one less, and then the number 2 tell.org, so one less to tell.org. That's the website. That's where you can go and tell your story. There's not a lot of on it yet because it's relatively new. But talking to my good friend, we came on this new idea that we say, hey, some of these messages, they come in the news, but they actually stay some sort of hidden, and we don't see them a lot. So maybe we should dedicate a page where we also gather those kind of stories, so that at some point in time people can see the accumulation, so to speak, of all these stories. And they're not pretty stories at all, but of all these stories that we have. And maybe because of that, people get a really good view of what's going on. Maybe there's not some sort of a central place, a central site, so to speak, or a repository where people actually can go to and see, hey, these are the stories of the victims and the survivors, and here are the people that write about it in the news. And there are some good reporters, and we had even a movie around, what happened in the Catholic Church. So if you start to see all these things together, then you start to see how big this problem is, and that we have to solve it, right? Now, I have a few ideas how to do that, but by no means I think I have the ultimate ideas. I spoke to a few colleagues working in this, and they have their ideas, and maybe we all together have maybe some sort of a solution of this. So that is my message for today. It's actually relatively short, but it is important. If you have a story, if you know someone, right, why don't you send it just to me, to jean@jeandorff.com. Yeah, jean@jeandorff.com. That's my email. I'll make sure that it gets on that website. Of course, we get a little communication first, whether you want to do that anonymously or whether you want to do that with your name on it. It's, we make that something super official, that it's really easy to do. It is not right there, but let's not wait till we get, all the technology correct. Let's start doing what needs to be done, even if that's a little bit, not so easy. Does that make sense? Right? So I learned from one of my coaches to always take uncomfortable action. So it is October 22, 2020. Pretty nice date if you think about it. 10, 20, 20, 2020. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I had to do that. That's a little bit me. And so we start something new today, right? Put a little bit more effort in, one less to tell. And so make sure that the world knows better what's going on. The people who are involved, they know that. But the numbers are so high that actually everyone knows it, but no one talks about it. It's like living in an old village, right? There's a secret there. Everyone knows the secret, but no one's talking about it. And we need to change that first, right? Does that make sense? All right. Super short podcast today. But that's the message that I wanted to place today. I hope you support this. You have been good listeners to my podcast already. So send it. That's why I keep it short. So I have to I have to turn this off really quick. Send this message to someone that you think that could need it, and say, hey, yeah, I wanna tell my story. Trust me. I have a lot of integrity around this topic. You can find me on my website, jeandorff.com. You can see that I wrote this book, Broken Silence, and we need to break that silence. And this is one way to do it. I will come back on this a few more times, but this is my first message on October 22, 2020. Let's do oneless2tell.org from now on. All right, this was Jean. I'd like to hear you tomorrow with a longer message. Bye-bye.